My name is Jeff Gray. I'm from Stillwater, Oklahoma. I am 42 years old, and I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and I have same-gender attractions. My story starts when I was, probably as early as I can remember. I grew up in a really fun neighborhood. Kids played a lot, they rode bikes, and everybody was friendly. I was pretty young. I mean, I can remember I was about 4 years old, and I can remember being in this really fun neighborhood where, I was fearless to go knock on different people's doors after I asked if kids wanted to play, and that's just kind of how our neighborhood went. And there was a big pond, all these houses circled around, and it was just a real fun environment for a kid. And but when I turned 6 years old, I had a lot of friends, and this one particular day, there was a tent set up outside. And I was really intrigued by that, and because, kids really like, new adventures, and that would be a new adventure for me. So when I was 6 years old, I went to this tent that was set up outside. And I was there with a friend that was about my age, and there was another boy from our neighborhood, and he was probably about 7 years older. And so that would make him 13. And so we were playing around, and we went inside, and it was really cool because, I'd never really been in a tent before. And it was, like this little house in the middle of nowhere. And but I really admired this older guy, this older boy, really. And I admired his he just looked stronger, and I, at that age, I was just really curious how I was compared to other people. And I noticed that he was stronger, he was more muscular, and I just noted those different features about him. And so I became more intrigued about this guy and more curious. And so during this time, we were playing around in this tent, and I wanted to know more about him. My mind wandered, my eyes wandered, and I wanted to see the things that I couldn't see because he was clothed. And so I was brave. I was a fearless little kid. I asked him point blank, can I see your private parts? And he quickly obliged, and pulled down his pants and let me touch him. That was a real weird, awkward moment for me. Feelings came through my body that I have never felt before. Surges of energy. It felt good. It felt a little dirty. As far as my mind could comprehend, but I really liked it. And I watched as he started playing around with my other friend, and he didn't seem to enjoy it as much as I did. So he didn't enjoy it as much as I did. And pretty soon all of a sudden we just stopped, and we got out of this tent, and we went our separate ways, and we never talked about it again. And I went back to my house and I kind of felt excited and kind of felt dirty and didn't really know what just happened. But I know it's something that I couldn't really fully comprehend at that time, but yet those feelings were so strong. And as I look back, I've had, here I'm 42. 20 years ago, I kind of addressed this and with a therapist, and the therapist told me, Jeff, you are taken advantage of. You are molested. And I couldn't accept that. I instigated it. I told him. I'm the one who wanted it. It wasn't like this guy was some kind of a lewd person in the park. If anything, I was the lewd person. And I caused this. And he kept telling me, Jeff, this is not your fault. This boy should have known better. He should have stopped. He was older. And just couldn't accept that. And so through life, I shamed myself from that moment. And that's where my SSA, or my same-sex attraction, was born in that moment. And ever since then, I know that would shape my world and shape my life. And I hated myself for it. So, elementary school and high school, that was good for, I had some good moments in there, but first in elementary school, it was kind of the typical things. I would, from that moment, that experience, I always kind of felt less than. Those are, big issues for people other boys who've had same, gender attraction, is that you feel less than, so you back off from these boys. And you starting to admire everything about them. They're talented, maybe they're smarter, they look better, and I don't know. And I eventually would learn that everything that I just wanted them to be my friends, but yet I wasn't willing to take that risk, to do those things that took to have them to be my friends. That would be entering in their world of sports and doing the activities that they enjoy doing. And I would look on the sidelines and look at this camaraderie that they have, and they're just palling around with each other, and I didn't have that. And I kind of just sat on the sidelines, and I just kind of sat there and felt ashamed and felt lonely. At the same time, my eyes were keen on those guys, my peers, and I would learn that the things that I really thought was attractive in those boys were the things that I lacked in myself, and that was a real eye-opener for me. So in middle school and junior high, this is before I was 12, I thought my tent experience was my only one. But I did have some guy friends, and they came over, and they started initiating, well, let's play around some. And so that was happening again. And I was kind of, and so it reinforced all those same feelings that I had. And it just, it felt good, but I just knew it was wrong. When I was 12, I was introduced to masturbation from my friends who would come over, and we would be playing around, and things kind of seemed innocent, but all of a sudden, for them, they were just normal guys, but they were just there. I guess it was just hormones going on for them, but to me, it meant a lot more. And so some of it was mutual touching with each other, and then. When I turned 12, I knew the principles of the gospel, and I just knew that, you can't be a deacon and do these things. And so I vowed from that moment that I would never do that again with another boy. But that didn't stop me, doing those kinds of things to myself. And I can say even to this day, I have never really kissed a boy. I've never really had... Ever since I turned 12, I never really had a boyfriend. I don't even know what that's like. I don't even know what that world is like. And so I think I've been blessed with a real kind of a mental block there from the Lord. That I have, this is a line there I've never crossed. As I progressed through middle school, sometimes things were easy. And I had friends, and things weren't always doom and gloom for me, but I would have these, cycles of inappropriate behavior or compulsive behavior, and that really bothered me. That seemed to dominate parts of my life, and I was really ashamed of that. And things that, wasn't even talked about in the church that much. And I can remember being in even a bishop's interview. When I was a deacon, they really like to they hound the youth on interviews, and I would reluctantly, because I knew I was trying to get a temple recommend for even a youth baptism, try to say I think I have a problem with the law of chastity. Sometimes I I masturbate. And that's so hard to get those words out. But at the same time, I wanted to resolve that because I really wanted to be a good person. And so that was a real struggle for me there. And, the bishop would remind me, well, about those girls, you really have to keep yourself and your thoughts clean when it comes to girls. And I just thought to myself, you know what, Bishop, I thought to myself, I didn't tell him, but if I really am perfect when it comes to girls. My thoughts are pure and clean, but I didn't dare tell him what I was really thinking. As I entered high school, my world seemed to change for the better. Even though I still had problems with compulsive behaviors and thoughts, I gained more friendships, and my confidence grew. And my friendships with other males were more plentiful. And I found that I didn't have to do all the same things that the other guys did, that I could find friendships with other guys and girls in, music or band or other school clubs, and those things were available to me. And so it seemed that high school was getting better. It opened new doors for me. My junior year, I auditioned for a performing group. It consisted of 12 seniors. It was actually kind of a show choir called Madrigal, and that was in high school. And I was the only junior selected to be in the senior group. And that gave me so much confidence, and we were so close-knit with each other. And I wouldn't say we were young ambassador quality, but we were pretty good for a high school. And what was interesting is that we actually had different, if you want to call them demographics from the school. We'd had, a couple guys that were still in football and things like that, and just across the board, we have different kinds of people. And and that helped me to appreciate, not everybody, people can appreciate those kinds of things. And so we were a close group, and I really enjoyed that year. In fact, that was probably my best year in high school, is my junior year, because almost all my friends were older. And my senior year was really good for me when it comes to friendships. I was voted by the student body to be the school mascot, and his name was Peter Pioneer. And that was really cool for me. And then I guess because of the same choir I was in, that show choir, and I had such a legacy with that, the big performing choir, which is more the concert choir, they also elected me to be their class president, which was actually kind of a prestigious thing back in high school, because there was many people before me, and there's a plaque on the wall to prove that. And so that was good. High school and college, I would explore some dating opportunities. I thought that was, that's what I should do. I really didn't know what same-sex attraction was. I thought I was just I just kind of labeled it, maybe just kind of tendencies towards, the same sex, and I really didn't know what it was. I knew I had these thoughts and feelings, but I did try to explore dating with girls to see, well, maybe this is just a phase and I'll snap out of it. So I would go on dates with girls, and they'd be kind of confused with me. They'd try to hold my hand in in a theater or something like that, and I'd get really nervous, and it felt weird and awkward. What was interesting though is when I would take them home, and I would try to, with my best romantic intentions, try to lean in for a kiss, and then it turned into a hug. And it really confused these girls. They didn't know where I was coming from, and it was hard to tell them, really what I was feeling. It was so awkward, and it was just a real block for me, and that just kind of reinforced the same old story. You're flawed. And then my thoughts that, you'll never snap out of this, and all that self-hatred that was always kind of an undercurrent. But it was interesting about these relationships, even in college, in my attempts. The only time I really felt emotions for these girls is when I felt like, well, we would argue over trivial things, or, it was anger. and we would kind of fight like a married couple. And the other time would be, well, we'd decide we'd break up. And then I found out, oh, there's another guy who's going to replace me. And I was jealous of him. And I'm going to lose her. She's my only chance. And that really bothered me. And I could see this is my only chance to be normal. And why can't she wait until I snap out of this? You know, at least wait on the sidelines. And I kept saying to myself, you know, I'm going to miss her. You know, is this what love feels like? Is this romantic feelings? Is this what I'm supposed to have? And those were the only really reference I had to go off of. And that's only emotions I had when it came to the opposite sex. After graduation from high school, I decided to go to Dixie College in St. George. That's where my grandparents were from, and I had strong Utah pioneer roots. And I thought I could either go to Rick's College or to Dixie College, and I decided to go where it's warmer. And so, you know, I don't think that was a hard decision for me. I thought, oh, that's a clean slate. No one knows me out here. I can kind of become my own person, and, you know, maybe things will work out for me. And then I also knew that mission's coming up. So that I knew that freshman year in college is really important. And I thought, well, you know, maybe I can work out through these problems that no one knew about, that I really didn't even know about. So my freshman year of college, any trials that I might have had when it comes to roommates, I don't know if it was, I guess it'd be times where I was more lonely. I kind of felt more attracted to certain people. I guess it would be my roommate. He was nice, but it wasn't always a constant thing with him. I think once I got to know who he was and saw him as a whole person, I don't think I dwelled on him. But yeah, there was other people in my ward where, ooh, you know, those same things, boy, I wish I could be friends with him, because I kind of felt like, here I'm starting over, but I need new friends. I'm not here back in high school anymore. And so some of those same tapes would replay in my head. You're less than, these people are better than you, they're better looking, look at how the girls flock to this guy, why can't you be like him? Plus, you know, you get the pressure of people from home, they're calling you, well, are you dating anybody? Are you going out with anybody? You know, when you go on that mission, isn't anybody be writing you? And, you know, I would just kind of make up stories. Yeah, I'm kind of dating, and I'm just really picky, and I'm kind of a late bloomer, and make jokes about that. And so, but, you know, it was a time where, you know, I had a lot of fun too, but, and I thought there was girls that I liked. And that's where I kind of really learned where, you know, I had a lot of people thought I was dating this girl, but she was actually almost engaged to someone else. I mean, my best friend was this girl. And when she got engaged, it crushed me. And that's when I really noticed that, you know what? You know, that's that same thing. Maybe that is what love is. I'm losing my only chance. And I thought, well, you know, if she would just give me a little bit more time, I could you know, pray harder and be better in institute, and that these feelings would go away, and that I would be attracted to this girl. She was attractive. But there wasn't enough motivation behind that attraction, or that those feelings for her, and I wanted more, and if I was going to pursue that. At this time, I was getting ready to go on my mission, and I was preparing for that, and I still knew I had cycles of the compulsive behavior that would come in and out of my life, and it was really shameful. And I mean, I would go through periods where, you know, months, and this wasn't an issue. But sometimes it would creep back in my life right when I didn't need it. And that's right when I was starting to prepare for my mission. In fact, almost maybe months within my mission, before my mission. And back then, I mean, I remember going to my bishop's interview for my mission papers. And I told him that I still struggled with some of this, but I did not ever tell him what I was thinking about. I never disclosed to him what happened as a 6-year-old, and those times when I was 11 and barely 12, and with those other guys. And I thought, even in itself, I thought, masturbation itself, is that something I could be excommunicated for? Most definitely. So when I was talking to the bishop and I was telling him about the masturbation, in my mind, I was kind of like, I was including everything I've done in that moment, from up to that moment. And so I felt very resolved after that interview. In fact, I felt like I was on cloud 9. And I felt so clean for the first time, because that little confession, it wasn't my first, but that little confession meant so much more at this time. I was older, I was ready to go into mission, I knew what that meant. And I was getting ready to enter the temple. And so I wanted to be clean. I was very conscious about being clean. And that's one thing I definitely want to go in the mission field, feeling clean. So I submitted my papers, and within a couple of months, I got called to the Arizona Tempe Mission. And so basically that would be the Mesa area, east side of Phoenix, and it was a wonderful mission. And I got there, it was actually that same summer before I got there, it was 122 degrees outside, and so I was a little bit scared about the heat, but I joke around that it was always a dry heat because Oklahoma is definitely hot and muggy, so I can handle the dry heat. And I was on a bike my entire mission except for 1 month. But I loved Arizona. So on my mission, when it came to companions, yeah, there were some that were attractive, but what was interesting about that is that we became friends and we became close. And I could appreciate his attraction more on an emotional level. It wasn't physical. And I'd noticed that those feelings would diminish towards those companions. And I think also because a mission gives a person an identity. You're an elder now. People know who you are. You may not know who they are, but they know who you are. And they recognize you on the street, and hey, Elder, and hey, this, and oh, we love Elder Gray. We want Elder Gray to come hang out at our house, and I love that, and I love the kids, and a mission just changed my world. We also became friends with people in my zone and other missionaries, and a world just opened up for me there, and I just felt so part of the church and of the Lord's army, so to speak. And the Spirit was also there. And I could see these other guys who were, they were probably jocks in high school and this and that. And I could see them on a spiritual level. And I could see them tear up in a discussion. And, it's like, we're sharing this together. And someone who I probably would have thought who was very intimidating in high school and I would have avoided. But yet these guys were my companions and people who I taught with. And I loved that. In my therapy later on, I would learn that my mission was the most therapeutic thing that I could have ever done. That I was getting my needs met as a man. I was getting all those stories I would tell myself that I was less than, that didn't happen then. And so I really appreciated my mission for that. I finished my mission up, and I came home, and it wasn't even 5 days, and I thought, you know what? Jeff, you prayed about this every day of your mission, about overcoming same-sex attraction, or what I didn't even know what it's called then. I just called it my tendencies. And I thought, I felt a real prompting of the Spirit is, you know what, Jeff? It's time to tell your parents. And so within 5 days of after returning home, I went upstairs, told my mom, then my dad came home, told him, and I said, I have an issue here. I don't really know what it is, but I think I have homosexual tendencies. And I cried, and what's funny enough is my dad was loving and accepting, and he kind of even said, I kind of wondered that about you, not in a shameful way, but I just always kind of wondered, and that might have been a problem for you. And my mom was, of course, very understanding, but that's as far as I let it go at that time. I didn't want it to leave that room. So I decided to get help. And so I went to LDS Social Services, which is now LDS Family Services, and they sent me to a gentleman who was an expert in this area. And And I was so happy about that. But he apparently had same-sex attraction himself, but was married and had kids, and he was one of the founders of an organization that helped LDS men with this issue, and so I was really excited that, oh, he's going to really be able to help me. He's a success story. And so I remember my first session with him is I was so homophobic. And that's usually reserved for people who don't like people who have homosexuality and that are gay. But I was the most homophobic person I could think of because I was scared of myself and I hated myself for these problems. And so we worked a lot on labeling and the different textbook issues that came with same-sex attraction. I had all the books and read all through the different things about defensive detachment and how you grow up and these things between something gets interrupted during childhood where at one time, boys stuck with boys and girls stuck with girls, but somehow everybody made the shift, but I didn't. And I learned stuff about that, and there's something that disrupted that shift. And that became really interesting. I did a lot of childhood biographies, and we just tried to look for, he was fishing for childhood trauma. And I just didn't have that, abusive father. I didn't have that overbearing mother. I didn't have that family dynamic that you'd hear so much about. And so I was just racking my brain for stuff. And something that maybe my father did. And I couldn't think of anything. And so I really didn't fit the mold. That was, the research at the time. I didn't fit the mold. And that's where, I told him about my early childhood experience when I was 6 years old, and he kind of worked me through that, and that's how he told me that, this was an act of molestation at that time, and that's just when I cannot accept that, and it just didn't seem big enough because it was something that I initiated, and I felt very shameful about that. Also in my therapy at Dixie College, we really worked on the cycle of compulsive behavior, which in my case would be masturbation, your thoughts. Everything starts with the thought, and what gave me hope is that it has good thoughts lead to better thoughts, and it just keeps building on itself. And the same being true of the opposite. My therapist would tell me that this has a cumulative effect. And that actually it gets easier the more that you can discard, or faster you can discard these thoughts. And he says you have really about 1.3 seconds to discard these inappropriate thoughts. And that kind of stuck with me. And I like the idea that it builds momentum. And the more that strength that you receive and from being more sober, I guess. And I would also see at the same time that the Spirit was with me more. And so those cycles became further and further apart. I would be aware of my things that would trigger me, and it wasn't even necessarily men that was my triggers. Maybe it was just being alone or angry or being stressed out in school and homework and things like that. And so it wasn't necessarily, it could end up being sexual, but the thoughts itself or the feelings initially weren't even sexual at all. And so that was a big help for me, learning to get out of those cycles of behavior, because that would also, I don't think he basically told me it's really hard to move on into change without mastering that first, and that really hit home to me. And so it was really kind of, at that time, is really learning about changing my sexual orientation. How am I going to diminish these thoughts of men and these feelings towards men? And I learned all the things about, you have to, if someone you're attracted to, my therapist would say, go be friends with that guy. Go at least introduce yourself to that guy. And so that would take him off the pedestal, and you would see him for who he really is. Look into his eyes and see him as a whole person. And I tried that. You know, we probably didn't become friends, but at least I learned to go up to the person and address him, say, hello, my name's Jeff, and I'm new, and or I've been in the ward, and I noticed that you have a really cool car or something like that, and just try to make friends with him. And I tried to see him through in his eyes and see the whole person. And I humanized him. And I took him off that pedestal and just found out, you know what? He's just the same as me. He has probably the same fears as I do, same inadequacies, and I just really saw him for who he was. And those feelings that I would probably have for him normally were diminished. And that was change and progress. And so I finished my school at Oklahoma State University, and so it was really kind of, at that time, it was really learning about changing my sexual orientation. How am I going to diminish these thoughts of men and these feelings towards men? And I learned all the things about, you have to, if someone you're attracted to, my therapist would say, go be friends with that guy. Go at least introduce yourself to that guy. And so that would take him off the pedestal, and you would see him for who he really is. Look into his eyes and see him as a whole person. And actually was a hotel restaurant management major. And that was actually a really good thing. I did an internship for school at Walt Disney World, and I worked in the resorts there and learned all about their philosophies and things. And so I really enjoyed college and learning that. But at the same time, I know after getting off my mission, it's time to date and the pressure is on. And I was in a smaller area. I wasn't in Utah anymore, so my resources were institute classes and things like that, and different singles activities, and it just was really intimidating to try to move forward. I kind of knew what I needed to work on, just from my years in therapy before then, but it was still hard. I was nervous. I would go to dances and stuff like that and watch other people, have a good time. And I kind of had fun, but, I was just kind of surface when it came to feelings. I would dance with girls, and I think I've probably even been on some dates with the girls, but it never really went to a second date, or it maybe went to a second date, but never a third date. And so those relationships went really quick. Just because at the time, no one knew. No one knew that I had these problems. I didn't want to tell anybody. I was so ashamed. And, even though I worked through a lot of those problems, I was still very ashamed of all that. So I eventually graduated from Oklahoma State University, decided that, you know what? Maybe if I move back to Utah, maybe that will help my problem. I need to be back where there's more resources. And so after I graduated, I moved back to Utah and pursued jobs there. And I worked in a hotel in Provo for a few years. And so I used all that experience from school for that. But I was living in BYU housing at the time, and in an apartment complex. And that was a really good time. That's where I met some of my best friends. We went on trips together with my roommates, and we were great best friends with the girls across the complex, and we just did everything together. We went to Hawaii together. We went on cruises together. We would make road trips together, and we were just a real tight-knit group. And we are all in contact with each other pretty much even today. And I eventually would move to Salt Lake. We kind of moved out of the Provo scene and continued to work there. And but at the same time, these roommates who were my best guy buddies, they were getting married on me, and that was hard. I was jealous of them. I was kind of mad at their wives too, and for taking them away from me. Not that I was really attracted to them, but we had an emotional connection, and it was really strong. I considered them my best friends. And that was hard to see them. I knew they had to make the change, and I was happy for them to be able to make that leap, because, they were actually getting older too. We kind of moved into the 31 and older singles ward together. So we kind of appreciated being older and what the problems were surrounding that in the church. So at this time, once I was losing my roommates to marriage, I decided, well, maybe I need another change in my life. I always have the grass is greener syndrome. And I thought, maybe I need another change. And I felt like, for the most part, I think I've worked through a lot of, I had therapists, even at BYU, a well-known therapist who helps a lot of people. And at the time, he was writing his dissertation on same-sex attraction, and he was really helpful for me. He gave me the tools where, I wasn't going in there thinking, I need help to get rid of these thoughts about men. I was thinking, at this point in my life, my thoughts towards men were gone. It was the heterosexual feelings I was trying to cultivate. And so that dominated all my sessions with him. We would go into, we'd have group discussions with his clients, and they were all, focusing on, I crashed and burned with masturbation again. And, here I was like a camel. I had one crash and burn instance, and here I could go months and years without having another issue when it came to masturbation. And so I felt I was kind of over that. And that's just kind of dominated these group sessions. And I was like, I'm trying to obtain these feelings for girls, because I knew the pressure was on. The decision of moving back to Oklahoma was because, and it was kind of twofold. My dad was a dentist in Oklahoma, and he just lost an office manager. She was going to pursue some other career opportunities. Actually, she was going to go back to school. And so I was kind of wanting a change, and he was kind of needing some help. And I thought, maybe I'll just move back. I spent a good, 8-10 years out in Utah, and nothing's really happened when it comes to marriage, and things weren't progressing that way, and it was a real block there. So maybe I better just go home and maybe help my dad out there and be with my family, and because in Utah I didn't have a lot of family there. So I decided to move back. And let's see, that was 8 years ago. And it's funny, when I moved back, it felt so good to be around family. I don't know, it was a turning point in my life. And that's when I came across, my mom handed me another book, and it's like, oh, here's another book to add to my library of SSA books. And it was co-authored by Ty Mansfield. It was In Quiet Desperation. I thought, I don't want to read another book. I'm kind of over the therapy. And but I kind of felt prompted to read this book. And it was really powerful. And for the first time, reading Ty's story, things just kind of opened up. And I know it was Ty Mansfield's words, but I know it was really the Lord's words speaking to me about, maybe this won't happen in this life. You could get married in the next life, and everything it'll be fine. You're going to be blessed with everything that the Lord has in store for you. It's going to happen. And the one thing that really hit home was also in the book was Paul and the thorn in his side. And I know a lot of that's popular in culture, but especially when it comes to like maybe Alcoholics Anonymous. They always say, Paul and the thorn in my side, and the Lord never took it away from him. But that story kind of hit home for me, that this maybe won't be an issue that I'll completely overcome in this life, especially when it comes to getting married. And here I was older. I don't even know how old I was then. 8 years ago. I'm 42 now. So here I'm in my mid-30s, And I know the marriage is not happening. And it's just a block. I don't want to just get married for the heck of it. And I remember telling my parents, we kind of came all together, and I wanted to read them the things that I was reading. And that moment, I just broke down, and I knew there's something. The Spirit was so strong as I shared these passages with my parents, and because they're the ones who've been with me for these, all this time, and they wanted the best for me, and they're so worried about me. And at this time, all my siblings knew. I was able to be more open to them, and so I really had my whole family. They were all backing me up on anything I needed. And but in this discussion with my parents, I just felt the Spirit overcome me, and the Christ was just letting me know that I am loved, and that don't obsess about changing, don't obsess about getting married. That's not my gospel when it comes to just being obsessed and having so much anxiety over everything where you just can't move. That's not how the Lord works, and that's what hit home to me. So in that moment, I felt such a calmness for the first time. It wasn't just something that was fleeting, but it was a long-lasting calmness came over me. And so the pressure to really change and to get married at that time was washed away. And that was a real miracle for me, and that gave me hope. After that, I still had moments of really lasting peace, but depression would creep into my life. And it's always kind of been something that's always been there, and that those that reoccurring thoughts of being less than and self-hatred and feeling flawed would come back to me. And I think a lot of that would take place as I would kind of contemplate, what? I'm going to be alone. What if my parents die? I was actually living at home at the time just because it just it made sense economically, and there was room, so we all lived together, and I became miserably safe, as I like to put it, and so I became really depressed, and I just kind of wondered what my future was going to bring for me. And I was really worried about that. What if my parents die? They're aging, and I'm going to be left alone. And that would really bother me. And it was hard to go into a family ward and see those young marrieds, people that were my age, younger than me, in fact, with their families and stuff, and I longed for that. And so when I turned 40, I kind of had a breakdown. I had a really, really low moment in my life, in spite of all the blessings that I've been given, really, all the changes that have happened in my life. And so one day, I was really upset. I remember yelling at my parents, and I don't think I was yelling at them, I was just kind of yelling and crying out for my life, just saying, I hate myself, I hate my life, I hate the situation, I'm never going to get out of it. And I'm going to be lonely, I'm going to be left alone, and I hated it. I hated it. What am I going to do? And so I decided, well, I got some extra anti-anxiety pills. I'll just take those. And I remember I was even in the same car with my parents, and I said, you know what? You better take me to the ER. In fact, I worked at the hospital then. And my friends, my coworkers at the hospital, they were my coworkers. And I came in, I called them. I called them on the phone and said, I'm coming in. I took 8 anti-anxiety pills, and that was a lot for me. And you better get room 4 ready for me, because I knew what room 4 meant in the ER, because everything was locked down in that room. That's where they put all the people that had psychological problems. Says, you better give me room 4, because I'm on my way in. Because I was halfway between Tulsa and Stillwater at the time. I said, you better get me to that ER. I did something really stupid. I told my parents that. And so and I never really thought about killing myself before, ever. But even in your darkest moments, those things can happen. And I never thought that would creep back in my life. But when you hate yourself, are your choices? What are your options? So, luckily, my blood levels came back where I was not a huge risk. Kind of slept it off. The ER doctor released me to go home. Basically said I just had an extreme anxiety moment, and released me. And after a priesthood blessing and from an elders quorum president and my father, my life came back to some normalcy again. And I guess that was my midlife crisis. I think that happened on my 40th birthday. I've been receiving promptings that I need to do something more. I thought I was just over all the therapy. I've done all I can do. I maxed out. I wasn't really progressing. I mean, even my therapist said, there's not really more I can teach you. Your feelings for guys have diminished, and your compulsive behavior are further and further apart. You can go years without those problems. Pornography has maybe been a little bit of an issue, but not really a huge issue. And so there really wasn't more for me to do. And so I've been receiving promptings within this last 9 months that maybe I need to do something more. And so, in January, I didn't even know the church even had a website, the mormonsandgays.org. I just stumbled over it. I mean, where was I? I guess I didn't live in the Utah bubble then. I wasn't really involved in any groups and stuff like that anymore, so I really just didn't know. And I recognized Ty Mansfield from that, from his video clip within the website. And, oh, yeah, that's the guy who, I have this book of his. I mean, it's been dog-eared. It has Diet Coke spills. It's been marked up. That's the same guy. And so I felt prompted, I need to get a hold of him. And I found a mutual friend who also knew Ty Mansfield. And that's the funny thing about social media, is you can find people who know people and know the same people. And so I was prompted to reach out to Ty. And that through that experience, I was able to talk to Ty on the phone. And it was a 2-hour phone call. And after the very next day after that call from Ty, he was so gracious to call me. He was so busy, and I ran right to the temple, the Oklahoma City temple, and I took my dad with me. And I've been just thinking a lot about the changes that were happening at this point in my life. I have had so many life stages with these problems, and it was time to take these issues to the temple. And the temple's a beautiful place. In that session, I cried the whole time. In the celestial room, I really, it's a place for meditation and prayer. And I sat in there and I cried the entire time. And I guess it was a ward temple night. I didn't even know it was, but apparently it was standing room only. But I couldn't even tell you who was there, because my eyes were just everything. I was just in my hands the whole time. And during that experience, the Lord came to my mind and said, "Jeff, please tell my sons that not to hate themselves. Please tell my SSA sons that I understand. I know they're confused. And please help me tell them. You've got to help me to tell my sons." And I just overwhelmed. This is, "Jeff, please help me." It kept going over my head. It's just, my sons hate themselves for this predicament. They think I don't love them. And I know why the Lord was hinting that to me, and emotion just flooded me. And I think the Lord was hinting home that I needed to forgive myself first. And that in order to help other people, I needed to start with me and to love myself. And so I left the temple. And I remember I emailed Ty that night and said, you know what? I'm so grateful that for our conversation, even our awkward conversation, it led me straight to the temple. Because at this time, I was thinking that I wanted, Ty wrote the book. I was wanting him to help me. I was wanting him to help me to progress. And I was and it was so hard to get a hold of him. I was blaming him for, for the Lord's silence. I mean, I was kind of putting those things together. And I thought, well, the Lord won't answer me. Ty won't answer me. What am I going to do? The Lord told me at that time, that maybe I need to be someone's Ty. And I told Ty that. And he says, I think he responded back saying, you know what? Don't be someone's Ty, be someone's Jeff. And that really meant a lot to me. And that led me to North Star and getting involved. And I just felt a community there. And it just opened up, things for me where I thought I just shut that down. And so at that point, I noticed that I had my family, but I didn't have my brothers. Yeah, I had an older brother. He loved me. I loved him. But I needed my brothers in the gospel. So after that experience, as I was looking on the website, and I noticed that people went and did these weekends where they were called experiential weekends, and where they learned more about being more whole as a man, and what they termed it more as gender wholeness, being more comfortable in your own skin. And it's like, I don't want to do any more therapy, but I kind of felt like, maybe I should do this. And that resource was not around 8 years prior. Just, I never even heard of that. And so I decided that I would sign up for this. And so in June of 2013, I went to this retreat. And that was the most meaningful 2 days I've ever had. I met friends there. You wouldn't think that in 48 hours that you would get to know 32 other men, but we got to know people on such a personal level without even talking to them, and it was such an incredible experience for me. And I remember on my last day there, we embrace and look at each other. And just the love that I felt for each person. And it was the love that the Savior felt for that person. And there was no talking involved. And as I would look into each person's eyes that I went through that experience with, I didn't know anything about them. I just know I kind of knew who they were, but I didn't really know what they did during this weekend for themselves. But I just felt the love for them so much. And that was an incredible experience for me. And so after that weekend, I decided, well, I went back home. And I was so nervous to go back home because I knew home, I love Oklahoma, and there's so many great people there. That was home for me, and home was a refuge for me. But I was missing something there that I didn't have. And it was my brothers, people who shared similar problems. And I needed their friendship. I needed them to be close to me. And I did have some friends that I met in Dallas, but it was just too far away that done similar weekends. And it was just too far. I needed more of it. And so I stewed over the whole summer, what am I going to do? And reached out to other guys and with the North Star and got their advice and how am I going to make this? How am I going to make this work for me? This stretch for me? Because I needed to get out of this rut that I'm in. I didn't even recognize I was in a rut. So in August of 2013, I started applying for jobs, and every day was just full of anxiety and what am I going to do and fear. And so I started researching out different maybe hospitals I could work with in Salt Lake. And then I think, well, where could I live? And who are my friends out there now? And so I just reached out to everybody. But one day, it's like I got a job all in one day. I got a phone call. It was after I sent out millions of resumes, it seemed like. I got a phone call that day, had an interview, had a second interview, and was hired within 3 hours, all over the phone. And I even asked the person who hired me, don't you want to even see a picture of me? It wasn't even done on a webcam. And so I emailed her a picture of me and just made sure, are you sure you really want me? And so I got a job here in Salt Lake City working at a hospital. And it's kind of funny because I went from hospitality to hospitals, and it's kind of a different shift. But I was in the people business, and definitely hospitals is where people come to get help. And I thought I could do that. And finding a place to live, that landed in my lap. An old roommate of mine who lived in Provo got married within the same month that I moved out here, which was in September. And I basically took over his condo, and I found another roommate to live with me. And things were just falling into place too easy. And I was just so grateful. I was so grateful to be back out here in Utah. Yes, I was gone from my family. Yes, I missed them. But I was back out here. I was back out with my other family, my brothers, and the camaraderie that I felt. And I even been able to reach out to my old roommates and things like that. And they all know about my story now. And it's been good to be authentic with them. And they have never shamed me, the people that I've told my story to. If anything, they love me more. And that has given me a lot of hope. As I look back on my life, I've come to the point that it's not so much about changing your sexual orientation, of making yourself crazy, of doing this or trying to figure out that puzzle that the Lord wants you to do so it will switch for you. I have learned that through this experience, it's about changing my spiritual orientation, how I treat myself, and to really accept myself who I truly am, that I am a son of God, and that I'm worth it, and that I have qualities, and that even though I'm 42, and I'm still single, and I really don't know what's going to happen next, I can lean on that. And so my whole mission in this life is to keep changing that spiritual orientation, and everything's going to fall into place. And I know the Savior loves me, and he'll do anything for me. And he knows that I'm trying. He knows it's horrible. It's not fun. But it's something that I have to go through. And it's funny, but through these experiences, I can see other people's pain and their suffering. And they don't even have same-sex attraction. I can see them in the way, I can sense them. And my heart goes out to them. I've basically given sacrament talks this last summer, right before my experiential weekend. And I said everything but my problem. But I think everybody could read between the lines. I got so many emails after that. I said, you know what? We live in the last days. These are last day problems. We make bishops' offices very full. We have a very bustling recovery addiction program in the church. People are in debt. People don't know what to do. We have problems in this church. And that's what I told him. And so I said, my heart goes out to all of you. If we could see each other's problems, we would be in awe. We'd be in awe of each other. We'd be amazed. And I said, I looked out into the congregation. I said, I don't want to see perfect people out here. I want to see your scars. I want to see your flaws. Like the pioneers across the plains, I don't want to see perfect people across the plains. I want to hear those stories of triumph and overcoming and what you had to do. My heart goes out to that. I guess that's my pioneer heritage, is my heart goes out to people who have suffered. So I looked out into that congregation, looked into every people's eyes, and I said, I don't want to see perfect people in here. I know you, I know you, I know you. And I know you all have problems. I know your family's problems. I know that everybody else doesn't know them, but I know some of your family's problems, and they're huge. My heart goes out to you. I've also come to know that through the suffering, that when Christ suffered in Gethsemane, I think that if he had to actually suffer for me, that I think he actually bled more for my own self-hatred than for any other problem I had. That he descended below all things, and whatever made him suffer or bleed more during that suffering was my self-hatred and the hatred of every person on this earth, more than anything that a person could do sinfully. And so that hit home to me, that Christ really suffered. He suffered. I love him for that.